they just run for like 4 seconds across the frame, and they're like limping, and it's like watching your granddad at the barbecue like line up a free kick where everyone's just like, oh, can we just not like. Babysat more.
Fine.
So
This is new.
I've swapped the monitors because I actually need a bigger one than you.
Yeah, you do. Yeah, you do. You can put that on the poster.
Need a
James
bigger
needs a
one
bigger
than you.
one than George.
Yeah. So guys, thank you so much for bearing with us for today's upload. I know we're a little bit late, not late because of like I've just been late with travel and whatnot, but because of holidays and schedules.
Yes.
We're actually recording this on a Wednesday night.
This is the earliest we could have seen each other.
Literally, we've made it work. You've come back from Venice and Croatia.
Yeah.
We're here recording today, the day the episode is meant to be out. So
sorry, guys.
As soon as I get to it, bear with me. And then you're off to Edinburgh tomorrow.
That's right. Busy times. I mean, last month you were traveling a lot.
I did, yeah.
And I know this episode will be late.
Still went on.
Yeah, can I just say, we've still had over a year of uninterrupted service.
Yes.
I would say since about episode 13.
Yeah.
Because technically we had like a month at the beginning of 2022, but who's counting that? But whatever. But
Yeah.
every single week,
we have something for you.
continuous
Through Christmas,
service.
we went
Through
through Christmas
Christmas.
PULP Kitchen Awards. So yes, last week was more of a it was a pre-record kind of look ahead episode.
Yeah.
But I enjoyed it. And look,
I'm glad.
We're now going to catch up with all the films.
Glad someone did.
Yeah.
And I have not. James and I have not communicated that much. I took a deliberate. I did that thing that people say they do.
Yeah.
I never do, but I did take a digital detox on my holiday.
Great.
I was in Heathrow Terminal and I deleted TikTok,
Whoa.
Instagram, and turned off mail notifications.
George,
on
we
my
got
phone.
cancelled. I needed you. It was crisis.
I didn't hear about it, so it didn't happen. That's absolutely fine, and I felt good for it. And I got Instagram back on my phone when I flew back, partly because I needed to kill time in the airport terminal. So I was like, okay, holiday pictures. And now it's on my phone again, and I find myself looking at it, and I've missed nothing. That's what I realized. I missed nothing.
Yeah.
Except selfishly posting my own photos.
It's so weird to think like, oh, I need to check what like everyone did today.
All you need is the dopamine hit of either seeing something exciting or someone liking something that you did.
I think I told you this before. I want to normalize actually sending photos to people when you're away or when
WhatsApp.
you're doing something fun or exciting.
Oh yeah, you asked me to send you a picture.
because I'm always like, actually send me a photo, because I think there's this assumption that I don't need to connect with this person. They'll just see my Instagram story or they'll see my post, which never really feels like you've sent me
You're
anything.
right.
I feel like you're just putting it out there and I can hopefully contribute.
It's not bespoke.
Whereas if I'm like, oh my God, like I'm at this really beautiful place with the person I love, just sending you love from insert location.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, George and Anna are thinking about
That's
me.
right,
Like
yeah.
I'm so happy for them. They're in that beautiful place. They look beautiful. It's
Thank you.
kind of like, you know, when you would send a photo or a postcard.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. And I'm thinking now of all of the people I did send photos to, yourself, a couple of other friends, they were always meaningful and funny.
Yeah.
And like with intent instead of just
banter.
Yeah, banter, exactly. You're right. That's a good point.
I don't even do it that much, but I'd like to do it more.
You should encourage people. That's what I will.
I'm always like, send me a photo. And I don't mean like
particularly if I was messaging you about something very briefly, I think I'll just send James a picture of where I actually am right now, which is having a cappuccino.
Yeah,
in
and I
Murano.
called you very briefly about like a PULP Kitchen thing, and it's like I didn't want to waste your time. I was like 5 minutes. It's like, I'm not going to ask you about your holiday because I don't want you to get back to your holiday.
Yeah.
I'm just going to quickly ask you stuff, and then I will
Very
see
conscious.
you.
You will see me.
I will see this man.
Because the show must go on. Just a quick note about Venice, which
We're okay.
is a thing that is a place that obviously that many people have already been to. I'm late to it. It's first time going. You've been several times. So thumbs up. Shocker. What a great place. Beautiful.
Unique.
We'll be reviewing and a bonus episode this week.
Venice.
No,
James, the thing about Venice is it doesn't pull its punches.
Yeah, and it's a sequel to Rome, and no, it's a standalone franchise. It's actually water-based. We're going to be reviewing Asteroid City in a bonus episode coming out later this week, but Venice is one of those places that's like, if you had a city designed by Wes Anderson, it would probably be Venice. It's amazing what I loved about Venice is like you realize how better cities are when there are no cars and there are no roads. Yeah. Venice is a pedestrianised city with boats.
It's lovely.
It's great. So there's no noise. There's no noise pollution. There's no air pollution, and people can drink without the risk of hurting themselves or other people by drink driving.
I have a theory that if you pedestrianise little parts
You
of
can drink
London,
boat drive, I understand that, sorry, but it's also very hard to drink in gondola, so...
yeah. I think if you only pedestrianise a part of a city, it's annoying because the car can't cut through.
Yeah.
But if you just pedestrianise all of the city...
Out of necessity?
No one...
Also...
We just cycle and scoot.
No e-scooters. No. That's the other great thing about Venice. No e-scooters, no cyclists. Because you can't. You just cannot do it.
You got steps up the bridge. Yeah, no, it wouldn't work.
It's wonderful for that. And in many ways, Venice is like... Sorry, I realise how I sound, which is Guy comes back from holiday and he's like, guys...
Oh, you gotta go.
No.
Oh.
I know.
Oh. Have you seen the Jim Carrey?
Yeah, the rich person laugh.
Oh, God.
Yeah.
Oh. It's like a Lego Jim Carrey talking about what it's like.
It's more that like, I'm just thinking about these things. And also I work in architecture, so I'm thinking about city planning and how that works. But I'm like, Venice as a city is the complete opposite of New York, as an example. But in many ways, they are very similar, and they are so completely distinct and unique and obey their own logic. You know, like in the sense that like, oh, when you go to Venice, you have to play by Venice's rules. You can't get a car places. You have to get a boat or walk.
Venice,
You have to obey Venice. You have to succumb and surrender to Venice. And the same with New York. It's like it's the grid system. You gotta walk 10 blocks. You get a cab. You get a subway.
You know what also doesn't work in Venice? Like traditional just Google Maps, because some of the alleyways. I was like Dom Cobb at Inception, like trying to shimmy myself out. Like I was like, this is not going to work.
That's the best part of it as well, because it's like technology. It's like Venice saying, you do not need technology here. I don't know what accent, some generic foreign person in a movie, in an Indiana Jones movie. It's like, you do not need Google Maps here. Venice will find you, and you will find Venice.
You were like James Bond at the end of Casino Royale, like resigning from MI6 on a boat, closing the laptop, and then Vesper Lind, like, you know.
Vesper Lynn, isn't it?
Vesper Lind.
Lind.
Not
Lynn.
Yeah, Lind.
Lynn. Make me a Vesper. Anyway, I'm back. Venice is great. Go check it out. Croatia, also lovely. Enough about my holiday, because who wants to sit and listen to some guy go, the sunshine, would you believe? And you know, they have the Euro there. Isn't it spectacular? What an exercise. Well, we have films though. You've been busy, thankfully, manning the film watching duties while I've been away. So we've got, what have we got this week, James?
So we're going to be talking about No Hard Feelings.
The Jennifer Lawrence
raunchy comedy. So I thought. And then we got Indy 5.
Yes.
Dial of Destiny.
Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny.
Yeah.
So it's 2023. The original came out in 1981.
I believe you.
Wow.
And then on the bonus content this week, guys, doesn't stop there. I'm going to be talking about Wes Anderson's Asteroid City. I know we're a bit late for this because of reasons of holidays, but yeah, please go and check out that. And also my first impressions of the first 2 episodes of Secret Invasion. They'll be spoiler free, but like you can probably just... Fantastic. So guys, the show goes on. I realized looking at the weeks ahead, July is busy.
Yeah.
We got Oppenheimer, we got Barbie, we got Mission Impossible, and others, Elemental. I was like, if I don't see these films this week because of schedules, the rest of the month, your holiday, my holiday, that would be it. And I can't let you guys down.
On with the show.
I want to say a quick thank you to the people who said hello to me at Glastonbury. It was both really sweet and slightly scary, because I was like, oh God, yeah, that thing I do is a thing.
I like that someone thought you called you George.
Yes.
I like that.
I literally...
I'm always in people's hearts.
Yeah, I set up my tent, and John very kindly wrote an email to us. I literally got out, and I was like 10 minutes into the festival, and someone walked past me, and I thought spoke through me and said, oh, hi, George. And I but he remained eye contact, so I sort of looked behind me, and then I realized, and he's like, hi, George, again, as he walked past me. And I was like, oh, hi. I was like, do you mean James? And he was like, yeah. And he was like, oh, I listened to the show. And I was like, oh, that's amazing. And yeah, he's like, oh, I wrote in on like episode 30 something.
Wow.
Really big fan. And I was like, oh my God, this is crazy. And then my mate was like rolling his eyes.
We'll get to your email later, John,
we will.
For writing in about that. By the way, Glastonbury, briefly, could you just summarise? Great.
George,
you know, it's the centre of the universe.
You know, George.
You know,
think about
it's a city. You succumb to Glastonbury.
I'm just the
it's
best
been like, have you been to Venice?
version
It's a bit
of
like Venice, but
myself
it's Glastonbury.
there.
Yeah, I get it. So James, Jennifer Lawrence, who's one of the biggest movie stars of the past 10 years, who has made fewer films in the past few years, has returned leading a film.
Producing it too.
Oh, really? Okay. An R-rated?
15.
Yes, R-rated, raunchy sex comedy called No Hard Feelings. Look, when we talked about this before, the funny thing is Jennifer Lawrence is inherently very funny. You know, anyone who watches her being interviewed, she's very naturally funny. when was the last time she was in a out and out broad studio comedy leading it? I don't think she has ever done it. So you've gone to see it. What's the gist?
I think looking at this film and looking at the poster of it, the main comment is, where have these films been for such a long time? And it's sort of been this interesting question of like, is Jennifer Lawrence, like, we've acknowledged that it's like not a side step, but sort of a different step for her to take for her career. Yeah. And it brings up that conversation of, well, where have these films been? Why aren't they happening? Is it because we don't get the right kind of talent? Because they're risky, right? Yeah. Because we don't get the right kind of talent attached for them.
Because they're non-IP, they're non-sequel bait, non-franchise.
Non-IP, yeah. And I think, we've covered this like many times in the show, and there might be this factor of, well, these are risky, so why don't we put them out on a streaming service where we don't need to buy cinema screens? And if it hits, it hits. If it doesn't, it doesn't. And I think there's almost been this argument, well, if the film does not have enough risk going into it, and if it can just be quietly released on a streaming service in the hope to go, maybe no one will watch it, and maybe there isn't this much of we actually need to make this film work in cinemas for it to justify the box office release. Like, is there a bit of this like catch-22 of one release thing basically ruining the other?
To be a good creator, you need to always have the risk of failure living over you. Yeah.
Yes, like the stress of the diamonds are forged under pressure, right? And so I think I went into this and I was genuinely, I think, rooting for it in a lot of ways. I like Jennifer Lawrence. I think she has a lot of potential to be very likable and very funny. The concept, quite ridiculous, which you kind of know about it, don't you?
Remind us.
No Hard Feelings is all about a character played by Jennifer Lawrence who is 32 and lives in a seaside summer town called Montauk. I'm not really familiar with it.
In Northern California. I believe that's sort of like Big Little Lies kind of area.
Yeah, very beautiful. Lots of these like sailing boats come in, and during the summer months, all these rich white families flock to their summer homes. The whole town gets completely rammed. Lots of people who live there can make loads of money from renting their flats, from being Uber drivers. But it's a bit of like a nowhere space. There's not really that much going there. And you've got at the center of it Jennifer Lawrence's character, who is ever so slightly lost. She actually inherited this house in Montauk, which her mother left her, which she refuses to sell. She really doesn't want to sell it, despite getting like potentially very big offers from wealthy people. She doesn't want to lose that sense of place and where she's from. And she's an Uber driver who gets her car taken away because of bad driving and a fine. So she's in this problem where she's got this house which she now has to pay a huge tax bill on. She doesn't have any money. So she goes on Craigslist, which imagine like Facebook Marketplace for people in the UK, and sees this ad from this very rich white family who is saying, we are looking for someone to date our son and bring him out of his shell. And it's just like littered with all these other weird ads on Craigslist, willing to pay you a car, right? And so she's like, surely I can't do this. What do they mean, like, actually date the son? So she goes to meet them, and the father's played by Matthew Broderick. And he's like, look, when I was my son's age, I was really awkward. But in the summer before I went to college, I dated this girl, and she was confident and cool, and she really brought me out of my shell. And the whole kind of central joke of it is like, so you want me to date your son, right? And they're like, yeah. Would you want me to date him? Or do you want me to, like, date him? And they're like, yeah, we want you to date him. And so it's sort of like, this... In all loads of other films, it's a really weird premise of essentially like hiring a sex worker.
If you just flip the gender around, it's really creepy.
It's really weird. So like she's 32, he's 18, and that's the sort of like central idea. And you've got this.
By the way, no creepier than Licorice Pizza.
Yeah, but I think this film is a lot creepier than Licorice Pizza.
Oh, really?
It's like, especially towards the end. Yeah.
Oh, okay, we go on.
I'll get into it. And basically, like, you've got this central comedy of Jennifer Lawrence is a gorgeous Hollywood actress who's like relatable and cool, like every young guy's dream girlfriend. There's this comedy of errors of she is desperately trying to get him to sleep with her, but he is so awkward and so clueless. She's finding it impossible to have this guy sleep with her. And that, when I saw the poster and the photography style and like pretty and awkward, like no hard feelings, like hard erection, blah, or anything you can read into it. I'm thinking raunchy sex comedy. Yeah. And this film tonally completely unravels to something so different. I think what they set out to do was go, let's pitch a raunchy sex comedy inspired by American Pie, anything that would have come before it. But let's also tell this deep story about growing up and coming out of your parents' shell and what it means to be where you're from. And the laughs really kind of stopped. And then sort of in the second half of the film, I'm like, what is this film do it. Tonally, where are we? It's not being funny anymore. I'm not emotionally engaged for any of this. Like, I actually came here for a laugh.
Yeah.
And the way it could make me laugh the most was like, what if all the characters were naked and it was slapstick and people were falling over? And it's really sad because that's all it really had to offer.
Oh no.
And I just like, you abandoned the comedy premise. Like, this is the first moment she goes up in this sexy dress to the pet shop that he works at, and she's like, hey, like, I want to buy a wiener. And it's like, I get, like, you've got so much potential for comedy there, and it just dies after that, unfortunately. And I think Jennifer Lawrence's character is really likable, and I like following her.
Yeah.
I really didn't care about this long-winded sense of connection to the place. It's like, it's a comedy, yeah, but actually it's like,
drama.
it's really deep, and it's a drama, and it's about people. And so, unfortunately, the result is really tonally warped and off, and there's just not nearly enough laughs to sustain it. It's a shame. I would love to have told you, George.
Yeah. It's a
Bring
shame
all your
because I
comedies to
was
the cinema.
interested, intrigued.
I honestly rooted
I
through
hate it when a film becomes something else.
It just wasn't. It really didn't buy enough comedy tickets to the raffle. I understand some of these things can be hit and miss.
You really can't with it. I think when you have a very genre-specific film, horror, comedy, it's really it's not wise to abandon it and try for something else in the second act, or third act rather, because you expect a service. You've got in for a service. With horror, you expect to be scared all the way through. You don't expect it to sort of change into...
Judd Apatow has gotten away with it at the expense of a very long comedy.
Yes.
Like in Funny People and Knocked Up, you go, this is really funny, but also I actually am really invested in these characters. They feel like real, rounded people.
Do you know Judd Apatow's... the crime is... His film's like 2 hours 40.
Yeah.
But his scenes are... one serious, one funny, one serious, almost one funny throughout the entire films. Even in the third act, you're still getting funny bits.
Yeah, the comedy's front loaded.
Yeah,
and it's sort of there. I really wasn't laughing that much. I also will say, and then the second half, it just veers off, and I'm like, you've lost sense of what this is.
Right.
I'm confused as to how I'm supposed to react to these scenes.
Runtime?
Oh, I think I want to say, I'm not sure.
100 minutes, maybe?
Maybe, let me check. Hour 43.
Okay.
So... And what I will also say is that I went to a screening at a multiplex, and there were up to 30 people in the cinema, which I think that's a factor. I'm here with an audience.
Yeah.
If the audience is laughing, that changes my laugh. There was not a single moment where I felt like we all laughed together
you're in it.
at the joke.
Yeah.
And I don't think it clearly tells the audience, like, here's where you laugh now. And then you input all of this other stuff about, this thing about her mum and what her dad would have done. And I'm not saying I don't want depth in my comedy films. It just felt really misaligned. Do you think you set it up?
Do you think there was an element they were like, oh, but this is Jennifer Lawrence, who's an Oscar-winning actress. Should we put a bit more drama in it? And they were like, no, we can't have her just do silly comedy because it looks like she's selling out. It's this identity crisis that the whole film has.
And then like the moves that the character makes at the end, you could see from a mile off. Like if I just paused the film after 5 minutes and I said, George, what do you think is going to happen to this character by the end after the premise? You'd go, I reckon this will happen. And it's deep without being surprising.
Do you know what it is? So, I mean, not to go on to a much bigger topic, which is something I've been tipping over my head for a bit, and I mentioned it in another episode, which is like the difference between films and movies. Right.
Yes.
If I can try and
dip our toe in this,
yeah, but it's like No Hard Feelings. That's a movie.
Yeah.
It's a studio comedy. And it sounds like they said, yeah, but let's try and be a film. It's like, no. You're a movie. You're a movie, and stick to the movie bit, and that's fine. That's what we all came here for. But don't try and be a film, and that's a different thing. You've got to set that from the beginning if you want to.
And the more it tries to be serious and tell a story, the weirder you're very kind of a little bit creepy. The creepy concept, I'm like quite happy to suspend my disbelief. But the more you try and like ground it and make the characters feel real, I'm like, well, this is just a weird thing altogether.
You've got to almost do the opposite. Make it more eccentric.
Make it more eccentric. Make it more out there. So I genuinely, maybe I had a bias. I was kind of rooting for it, and I just never really kicked into comedic gear.
It's not biased to want to see a film and want it to be good.
To like it. I'd love to be like, George, the comedies, get them out on the big screen, get all the big actors, call Julia Roberts again. No, I'm so sorry. It's just not quite there.
Okay, well, if you guys have seen No Hard Feelings and you agree with James? Hey, James.
Hi, James.
If you agree with James or disagree with James, let us know by emailing in to hello@pulpkitchenpodcast.com. That's a shame.
And I think Jennifer Lawrence is good in it.
She's good in everything.
She's good in everything.
She never disappoints.
And she's not unlikable. I can see that she can be funny if given good material. But if the best thing we can think of is, what if that happened, but they were naked? It's like, okay, like I'll give you one of those.
Yeah.
That's funny, like once in your movie. We can't just keep doing that.
That was No Hard Feelings. Indiana Jones, James. So there's a new Indiana Jones film, and I can't remember the last time I watched Indiana Jones film. They're from my childhood. I always get the impression they're slightly bigger. Did you watch it in preparation for this?
No, but coming out of lockdown.
All three? All four?
I watched the first three and showed the first three to Talia for the first time.
Okay, and verdict?
Yeah, she loved them.
And did you still enjoy them?
Yes, I still really enjoyed them.
I feel like Temple of Doom's a little weaker.
Oh, so Temple of Doom is one of my favourites.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Kalima.
It just captures the imagination. It's completely batshit in the best way.
Okay.
To me.
I mean, I haven't seen those films since I was younger, but I really enjoyed them. And like my dad will quote Raiders all the time. Yeah. He'll always just be like, "Start the engines!" Just about something, unrelated. I don't know why.
You'll just be in the car and screaming at you in the back.
So when this new one was coming out, I was thinking, okay, here we go again. So fifth film, but another belated sequel to a belated sequel.
And a fourth film which was not well received.
No, to a franchise that began in the early 80s, nearly 40 years ago. But okay, Top Gun Maverick, that was a long-time sequel as well. And I've seen the poster on the bus, and I'm thinking, how do we feel about this? I've said before that the idea of Indiana Jones 5...
What does it mean in 2023?
I feel like I said, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, that would have been a joke in Seinfeld, that Harrison Ford in his 80s is still playing.
Yeah.
And in a way, it's kind of synonymous with the death of cinema. That they're like, we couldn't think of anything else, so let's wheel out Harrison Ford.
Weekend at Bernie's Harrison Ford.
Get him to crack the whip again, literally. So, James, but we do have a new film, The Dial of Destiny, Indiana Jones, 2023. What is it
like? From the sounds of it, Indiana Jones occupies a lot of a warmer place in my heart than it does for you. Like I absolutely
No, I'm
not saying you don't, but like I've watched
you're
them
closer.
over and
I
over
think you're
as
closer.
a kid.
Yes, yeah.
Really,
I had the box set, the first three, and I also had a couple of episodes of the young Indiana Jones.
Yes, yeah,
I was with
remember
River
those.
Phoenix.
Yeah,
I watched some of those. Yeah, they were pretty good.
So I remember always really loving them as a kid. And you're thinking about this question of Indiana Jones in the 2020s. What does that mean? Why are we doing it? Why are we here? What does it have to offer? And so much of Hollywood and our comic book films and basically all the IPs now are monetizing nostalgia. And I think, oh my God, Indiana Jones, I have so much nostalgia for it. But actually, it's something I've realized growing up and maturing my opinion in films that, yes, I have a lot of nostalgia for Indiana Jones, but when you look into it, these films are baked in with nostalgia in mind. They are inherently nostalgic pieces of art. They are love letters to 30s serials and the action-adventure romps from 50 years before the Indiana Jones films are made. So, Spielberg was really sort of, and George Lucas, who's co-writing them, were very much had that in mind. So they have predictably aged over the decades, as they should. And that's not to discredit what I think the Indiana Jones films have done and what I think Harrison Ford does and how sort of tight and great those films are. And I think if you're saying you prefer one, I'm talking about the original trilogy, if you prefer one more than the other, I think it's kind of like the original Star Wars trilogy. You're sort of splitting hairs, but all in all, we love them as a whole. And then, there's no hiding from the fact that Harrison Ford is in his 80s doing this film.
And we like Harrison Ford.
I love Harrison Ford, and he's an incredibly talented actor. He has been brought back for many of his franchises in Star Wars many times. Blade Runner. Am I missing something?
I think though.
Is that it? Like a big three. Like they brought him back, and I think one of my
his
favorite,
three big roles.
I think like in The Force Awakens, the scene where he's like the Jedi, the balance, the Force, all of it. That's one of my favorite scenes in Star Wars. It's absolutely fantastic. And so we have this movie where it's the fifth one. We've got Phoebe Waller-Bridge in there as well, coming in as well. Sort of rightly bring that sort of like young, plucky enthusiasm. And she is sort of swashbuckling the original buckle that swashed. Right? To be one. Like,
no buckles were swashed until
He would literally have buckles that would swash around. So here's how the film starts. We start with an elongated sequence set in 1945 with a de-aged Harrison Ford as Indiana Jones. It is the end of the Second World War. The Nazis are scrambling as to both sort of like get rid of the evidence, but also frantically find the last remaining relics which could potentially have a secret to turn the face of the war. As we all
Some
know,
sort of
like,
supernatural power,
especially in fiction, Hitler was obsessed with the supernatural and finding a magic power that would turn the tide of the war. And right at the very end, the war is over. We have Indiana Jones basically breaking into this complex. The Nazis are all leaving, but there is this one piece, half of a dial of destiny that remains, and it's said to be the tool that was used by Archimedes to move through time, use maths to calculate Indiana Jones MacGuffin stuff. And he, on his adventure, meets Mads Mikkelsen, who at the time is like a scientist, archaeologist working for the Germans, and also Toby Jones, who is an Oxford professor, who is also obsessed with the history of this thing and is sort of like his Indiana Jones at the time. Buddy, we've got de-aging software, and it's one of those things where it's so good, but it's almost there. It's like in a still image, it looks great. And I think it reminds me of, do you remember the Peter Jackson Tintin films?
Yes, never saw it. Tintin film, singular. They didn't make a second one.
It's a Tintin film, and it was like really technically sharp and detailed CG, but obviously like it did have this sense of uncanny valley and this like sort of plasticine feel to it. I think Harrison Ford looks great. I do think these de-aging things immediately rip me out of the film. They're inherently quite immersion breaking. And I think in so many ways I'm thinking, this looks really good, but I feel like if I rubbed my hand across Harrison Ford's face like wet paint, it would sort of smudge. So it's fine.
Let's just say, because I love it. I do love it. When it's done properly.
Samuel L. Jackson in Captain Marvel takes the lead for me.
No, because sorry, to tangent here.
Yeah.
The longer you do it for, the more you break the illusion. And there are bits in Captain Marvel where, yes, he's got a great wig on, but he also runs like he's 69.
They all run like this.
Yeah, right, exactly. But I actually think even Ant-Man, the early Ant-Man with Michael Douglas in the prologue. That's
that was
perfect
good.
example.
I agree. I'll give you that.
And young Kurt Russell, Guardians 2 at the beginning.
It's getting there.
I mean, with the beginning of Guardians 2, I remember seeing Kurt Russell and thinking it's like he just walked off the set of the thing. I think it's pretty good, but I do, when it's done right and done in tiny little amounts, it's good.
Maybe it's a me thing because I'm like, oh, it's de-aging. Oh god, and it like the first shot of Harrison Ford is him like being he's sort of been like captive and he's got a bag over his head.
Oh,
and then it's like. Reveal Indiana Jones from your childhood, remember, but he's young. It's Harrison Ford.
Fair enough.
And he talks because it's Harrison Ford, but just like a lot of makeup. Anyway, you got this elongated chase sequence through a train. You know, we cut to the end, and it's like, oh god, it's like Indiana Jones. Cut to 1969. Indiana Jones is still a jobbing professor of archaeology, but we have just landed men on the moon. Everyone is looking up to the skies. No one gives a damn about dusty old relics and archaeology.
Much like Stinky Pete says in Toy Story 2. Do you not remember that? When he's like, but what happened? Sputnik. Everybody wanted to play with space toys.
It's Woody's worst nightmare, basically, is what's happened. That's exactly what's happened. Nobody cares about, everyone's talking about space and the moon. But who stumbles into Indiana Jones's lecture hall with the only one who's able, he's asking them, anybody do the reading? And people on the bridge puts her hands up and she's done all the reading. And she is the daughter of Toby Jones, his former pal. And she's actually her goddaughter, his goddaughter. So he has this sort of like, he should have been more around for her, but never really was. And she is also, like her father, obsessed with finding the Dial of Destiny. But there are also still the Germans who are no longer Nazis, but are kind of secretly Nazis. We've got Mads Mikkelsen now, 20 years in the future, still after this thing. And there we have our plot. It's an eccentric chase, globe-trotting, running around from Tangiers to all over the world.
Directed by James Mangold this time?
Directed by James Mangold, who also did Logan. We've got I can't remember his name, the blonde guy who's also in Logan as the villain.
Boyd Holbrook.
Who plays basically the same role in this film.
Just on James Mangold a second.
Yeah.
He is like, he's quite a safe pair of hands. Like, Logan was good.
Yeah.
He's made films for years. He did like Girl Interrupted back in the 90s and, Walk the Line.
I think I remember we said when it was like Indiana Jones,
Ford
James
v.
Mangold.
Ferrari.
We went, could be fine. Look, it's not a constructive thing to say, but Harrison Ford is just, he's so on. I think he's a fantastic actor.
Yeah.
And I really think he should be doing city talky scenes with like Mark Rylance in a dusty old Cold War espionage thriller. I just, unfortunately, you know what I realized is that they had to keep Indiana Jones in motion the entire film. So if he's not running on a train, he is on a horse, then he's on a bike, then he's on a horse again, then he's on a boat, then they did not let the man like walk
because it would show he's old.
He's literally limping and mobility scooted across this film. There's this scene with him and John Rhys Davies, who plays, back from Raiders of the Lost Ark, where they just run for like 4 seconds across the frame, and they're like limping, and it's like watching your granddad at the barbecue, like line up a free kick where everyone's just like, oh, can we just not? Like, I really have so much respect for Harrison Ford. And
yeah,
you know
of course.
What? He's so good in this.
Yeah.
But it's just that's not what I need to see in an Indiana Jones film. Like, find a really great way to pass on the baton in the spirit of Indiana Jones. Or if you want to make an Indiana Jones film, I think you don't, and you go, let's make something in the spirit of it.
Let's make a better Uncharted film.
Like, yes, like what genuinely what Uncharted is in the games. Like, you go and you take that spirit of it and you give it something else. The last act is really icky and messy, and I hated it.
How so?
It doesn't feel like Indiana Jones. It's everything that never really works for me in terms of you take a real sort of adventure archaeology film. I think you should always dip your toe in the supernatural and not jump in it.
Oh yeah.
And I could see where it was going, and I just thought I really don't like the look of this, both from just thematically for Indiana Jones, how it didn't really have any relevance for what I thought the character should have an endpoint. I'd really like it provided a good platform to finish off a character like Indiana Jones's arc. And I just left the feed, like, I was kind of fine with, there was nothing about it I found particularly offensive.
Yeah.
But that last act left a really bad taste in my mouth where I just thought, ooh, God, I didn't like that.
So, okay, just to understand what you're saying there. So it's kind of, it never really kicks into gear because inherently it's got the problem at its heart, which is you have an 80-year-old man who we love, but should be doing a different thing. We should not have built an entire James Bond film around an 82-year-old. There's a reason James Bond
does not walk more than 5 yards.
Yeah, because
he at every option, it's now in a tuk-tuk, and now in this, now we scuba dive because you're weightless in the water.
There's that scene of in the trailer, but very briefly, where he's on the back of the horse and there's like a giant parade.
Yeah, that's like one of the things.
But I saw that and I was like, that looks a bit dodgy. Yeah, that's a stuntman with his face.
Because they want to have a chase scene. Yeah. They want to have motion. They need to have movement. We can't get to it. And I feel so, I don't want to be rude to the guy because I don't want to be disrespectful. No, but I do just feel like you've mobility scooted him through this runtime. Oh my
God.
And I just don't feel like
put him on one of those airport things, where they get people to their gates quickly
Literally. It's like, can we just let the poor man have a sit down, and then you end with that. Like, there's nothing that offensive about it. I don't really mind Phoebe Waller-Bridge's character at all, but there's nothing. I think Phoebe Waller-Bridge's style, and whether it's her writing or her acting, I feel like she really thrives in a modern satirical environment. I'm not sure and I could be proved wrong, but I don't see her in the high fantasy genre.
It's funny because we had that question recently from someone who was like, "Oh, when the people look like they've seen an iPhone, they shouldn't be in his period pieces," which I don't really believe in. But I do understand if someone stylistically, it's like when I said
it's in a Pizza Express.
It's when I said it like if you saw Matt LeBlanc in The Hateful Eight, it wouldn't work. But you expect Phoebe Waller-Bridge to be at a Costa.
And that might be because I've only seen Phoebe Waller-Bridge mostly in the Fleabag format, which obviously she wrote, and it's very much of
very
her.
Modern and
really modern. I think she really has changed the game in terms of how we write for that kind of voice. I don't dislike her, but I'm like I would rather see you do loads of different things. I think you have more to offer in a different kind of space.
So it's a bit muted then, a bit limp.
I think it's a little bit. I'd go as far as to say it's bad. I really would. If someone asked me, I'd be like, it's not great. It's bad. The ending, I think, just kind of so the last action scene. I'm watching it like, please just
Granddad, sit down. Don't. You're gonna throw your back out.
It's okay. And this isn't a spoiler, but I got to the point towards the end where I was so detached from the character. I was like, I don't know, are they going to kill him? Are they going to not? At this point, you've not given me enough for me to actually care about Indiana Jones, and I think that's a little bit sad.
That is sad.
So that's how I felt about it. I think the reviews have been pretty harsh.
Yes, mixed at best.
And I really did try to go, I love Indiana Jones, I want to try and enjoy this for the fun fair ride that it is.
Runtime? 2.5 hours, I bet. It looks like 2.5 hours. Again, because it's got on the face of it, it's got so many good ingredients. 222. Toby Jones, Antonio Banderas.
Tony Jones as
Toby
always.
Jones.
Sorry, Toby Jones. Tonio Banda Jones. Toby Jones is really good in it.
Yeah.
He does that.
He's good
like
at most things.
like a slightly twitchy professor with obsession and details and maps and scrolls. Antonio Banderas is in it, but could have not been Antonio Banderas.
Yeah.
I love Antonio Banderas.
He walked on set and said, "What are you filming today?"
Yeah.
I will be in Indiana Jones.
do it wrong.
I can do it wrong.
I can be the scuba.
Boots in boots.
Like,
Okay.
there's nothing wrong with it, but it could have been. You could have put anyone there.
So a disappointing shame that is not
Unfortunately
what the film we really wanted.
And that's the thing. I'm like, okay, so you've made this film. What do you have to say to bring? Well, why
if
are we
you're bringing
back?
if you're bringing it out of the dirt again, dusting it off, for what purpose?
It makes me feel so cynical that we're just here to make money. We're
Yeah.
just here to go, oh, that's a guaranteed good time. And you know what? I don't think that someone it's not that I'm so old and I'm jaded. I don't think a kid who's 10 years old would actually have a better time with it than I would. I really don't.
Well, there you go.
And I think that's quite sad.
If you've seen Indiana Jones The Dial of Destiny and you'd like to let us know your thoughts, please email them into hello@pulpkitchenpodcast.com. We'd love to know if you disagree with James, if you agree, if you have any thoughts. Did we miss anything in our review? We're really intrigued. Did this hit the mark with you? It'd be interesting to know if other people feel the same way. Have the critics got it wrong? Let us know.
I don't want to lose that genre either. I don't want that to be like, oh, well, this sort of blowing off the dust off the puzzle in the ancient puzzle room, and we get to the next bit by pulling the lever. I love that.
Yeah.
I don't want it to die, and I don't want anyone to look at
quite
that film.
analog.
Very analog. I don't want anyone to look at that film and go, oh, but people just don't like those films anymore. I was like, no, man.
Well, yeah, because we made Dial of Destiny, didn't do so well.
Yeah.
It's not, box office-wise, it's not done great.
No.
In the US.
It's been a tough couple of weeks for the box office, I think. There's been quite a few films that have not hit the mark. Flash.
The last one that did was Across the
Spider-Verse
did
done very well.
But after that, I think Flash suffered because it was the next superhero film
Yeah.
that came out 2 weeks later, and it was just played with
I don't want
troubles.
Hollywood to just be like, I guess we make another Spider-Man universe. What if it wasn't animated? What if it was plasticine?
Okay, that's a shame.
Well, sorry, I don't mean to be too negative about films, but, you know, it is what it is. We hope for them to be good.
I know.
Just as we hope for our emails to be good.
Which they always are.
Which they genuinely always are. And if you wanted to send us an email of your impression of a film, your thoughts, your concerns, please do send them into hello@pulpkitchenpodcast.com. Just like...
Their name is like Monty Python and the Holy Grail.
Just like Cal did. Cal writes into
Hi,
the show
Cal.
and says, hey, James and George. This is Cal writing in again. First off, I have to confess that I've been copying one of Pulp Kitchen's famed game ideas.
That's it.
I co-host
I'm calling the lawyers.
you lawyer up. I co-host a radio show for my college, and one of my new favorite segments is Song Antonyms, where the host gives the opposite name of a song and the other guesses. A take off your movie antonym game. I hope there are no hard feelings because I stole from the podcast, but your guys' games are so creative and fun that I could not resist. Cal, of course, that's absolutely fine. We originally, like when we first started doing them, like it twisted a format for something else.
If you wouldn't mind just saying that you were inspired by Pulp Kitchen Podcast,
that's okay. Reference to,
you know.
But I also appreciate that Cal's out there getting the broadcasting skills out there, doing the radios on the old ones and twos, doing the
This is
love it.
Plugging in the different.
The analog.
Yeah.
Cal goes on to say, I just finished listening to a great episode where you guys answered a question about cinema experiences that changed your overall outlook on films. This made me think about the first time I watched Fargo. I instantly loved the thick accents, cold scenery, and most of all, the Coen brothers' ability to tell a quiet story. I felt for the first time that I was watching a real movie that valued storytelling over ticket sales. However, I recently watched it again, and it did not hold up to my memory of it. I know the movie is meant to be dull, but I still struggled to remain engaged.
Well, I don't think the movie's meant to be dull. I think
it's a dryness to it.
Yes. Well put, James. Thank you.
Things like Francis McDormand's late entry, brackets 34-minute mark of a 95-minute film, and it's 95 minutes.
Wow.
I like that. And I would have gone that for 2 hours. But and the almost stereotypical presentation and performances of certain characters, like the wife and father-in-law, bothered me way more than I thought they would. I'm not sure if this is because the film isn't that great or if I'm just wrong. So please let me know what you guys think. All the best. Keep up the good work. Cal. George, Fargo.
Well, I've only seen it once, a very long time ago.
Same.
I barely have a memory. I think I watched it actually when I was a kid, but I have seen the TV series Fargo. I've watched
I've only heard great things about.
Yeah, I've watched the first 2 seasons. They've made 3.
Oh.
I think I swear they were bringing out a 4th with Chris Rock, and maybe that's already come out. Maybe it's completely passed me by.
Yeah.
But The things with the TV show of Fargo is that a bit like that, it was very slow. The first one was really great. It had Martin Freeman as doing his proper Minnesota accent.
Minnesota.
And
Hey there.
Billy Bob Thornton and Bob Odenkirk and Adam Goldberg and Key and Peele it's the first time I ever saw Key and Peele together as FBI agents.
Oh, cool.
And that was really great. And also, sorry, we were talking, some emailer last week said about like movie deaths, the ways people have been dispatched.
Yeah.
There's a bit in the TV series of Fargo where they go looking for a guy and they go to this bar and they don't find the guy they're looking for, but this big, heavy, bald, brutish guy, just a lout at a bar, basically, like picks a fight. And so they knock him out and they take him out to this tundra lake in Minnesota, midwinter. And they walk across the lake. And this guy's like muttering to himself because he's been knocked out. He's like, and they, when those big like circular saws that you drill through ice when people want to go fishing or whatever, they drill a hole in the ice, which takes like minutes to actually get through the thickness of the ice to get to the water underneath. And they pick the guy up by his legs and they hang him over the water. And he's like, and they just drop him in. and then it takes a long shot and it just shows them walking back to the car. And I was thinking, that's so dark.
Because you know what, like a writer's thinking, like, that's a really cool way I can kill a person in a cold
who's
environment.
Not unconscious, he's semi-conscious, and you put it, but unable to save himself.
The shock of like being dumped into frozen lake water.
I mean, it'd be done in a minute, wouldn't it? It'd be awful.
Yeah, 90 seconds.
The second series of Fargo was pretty good. That was one was like set in the 70s. Had Patrick Wilson and Ted Danson, and it's like it gets really weird, but great soundtrack. Loved that. No.
Basically, as far as the film goes, neither of me and George have seen it in a really long time.
What I will say is, what Cal doesn't mention in his email there is what is the time between him watching it for the first time and watching it for the second time, because we've talked about how we age with films and how films change with us. Like,
time.
Did you watch it when you a couple of years ago, Cal? Was it 5 years ago? I'd be interested to see.
College age, so yeah, it could have been.
It could have been recent.
Yeah. Oh, it sounds like you would have watched it fair time.
But I would actually love to give, especially now I know it's 93 minutes. I'd love to give Fargo.
Yeah, I remember very much enjoying it when
William
I
H.
watched
Macy and Steve Buscemi. It's very 90s.
It
William
really
H. Macy, Steve Buscemi, and Peter Stormare.
Steve Buscemi is someone that like you could put at the first round of a Casters Countdown. You could be like, that could be any film. It literally tells you nothing about it.
All right, thank you, Cal. This next email is from Mia, who says, "Hi lads, big fan of the pod. Also, big fan of the name. I was actually named after Mia Wallace in Pulp Fiction, specifically at the point where she says her name on stage in Jack Rabbit Slims in a very cool and sultry manner. I know exactly the bit she's talking about. It's when she's like, Miss Mia Wallace.
Your parents.
And who's this? Vincent Vega.
Your parents met at university where they walked into the dorm and it's like, oh my God, do you like Pulp Fiction? Yeah. And the rest was history.
Oh, parents probably were at university or whatever when the film came out. Anyway.
Well, they saw it and they were like, I'm going to get the poster of this film.
Mia goes on to say, I recently watched Black Mirror Season 6, Episode 2. Okay, so Mia goes on to write a paragraph about Season 6, Episode 2 of Black Mirror, which I have not seen and you have not seen.
No.
But I'm pretty sure, just scanning over this, it contains some spoilers. So okay. I'm reluctant to read it out.
Basically, we would love to cover Black Mirror when we've seen it. Unfortunately,
yes. Because also Black Mirror is one of those things that if you reveal the ending, it's usually like, a reveal, isn't it? So I'm going to just skip over that paragraph, Mia, but to get to the second paragraph where Mia says, secondly, a big thank you, in capital letters, to the person who sent the email in about the show The Offer and to George for covering it. If we remember, The Offer was the show about the making of The Godfather, which is on Paramount Plus, Miles Teller, etc. I reviewed it at the beginning of the year. Mia says, I watched it after listening to the pod episode and I absolutely adored it and have subsequently recommended it to a load of my family and friends who are loving it too. What a great show! I agree with everything George said about it, thank you. I'd give the acting another shout out as it is impeccable. Two actors in particular that stole the show for me were Matthew Good and Giovanni Ribisi, who I will now stop referring to as Phoebe's brother in Friends. Matthew Good, I love...
Matthew is good. So
Matthew is good, but Matthew Good in that show is just a delight. I would watch a whole spin-off with him as Bob Evans.
I think it's really hard. I think a TV show being very good is not enough for it to be seen by enough people. Like there are so many. It's probably been true for a while, but like it's so many TV shows that are really great.
Yeah,
are very easily being lost in the shuffle.
Yeah, I know. That's quite depressing, isn't it? Really. Yeah. I found it particularly interesting that they never reenacted any scenes from The Godfather. They just showed the reactions of those watching it, which I thought was a really clever move.
It's quite well restrained.
Yeah, they're making it clear this is a story you don't know. Absolutely brilliant, and I would love to see more like it. I'd love to know, James, have you watched it yet?
I've not, but like I'm very much sold. It's just a time thing, and
and George, have you finished it? I have finished it. I really liked it. My only thing with it, I would say, is just that the longer it went on, the more I watched it, I became aware that I was like, this isn't strictly sticking to... it's not trying to be historically accurate as such. It was the more the episodes were on, the more fast and loose it was playing. I think I might have said this in the review. It was don't let the truth get in the way of a good story. If you accept that, you can have a great time with the offer. But it is really fun. It's such a blast, that whole series. Anyway, then Mia says, sorry for the long email. To relate to another quick question, though, we all know a lot of TV shows that should have stopped before they did. But have you ever come across a mini-series or a limited series that you think you could have done with more of? Sorry if this has been asked before. Keep up the good work. Mia from Ireland.
Do you have one?
I would say... it's tough, but the one that came to my head was actually that show Unorthodox. Did you watch Unorthodox?
No.
It was on during the pandemic,
Yeah.
you know, on Netflix, about the very, very Orthodox
Yes, I
Jewish,
remember the show.
and then she left and she goes to Berlin and stuff. And like that was like 4 episodes, I want to say. And they really rushed some stuff in it. And I was like, whoa. This whole world of this community is so interesting. I really could have actually had it really explored more, and all the relationships between all the characters with all the other people who have left the community and are trying to live differently. I really could have actually, I was like, this, you could have done 8 episodes and taken your time and really substantiated it instead of kind of running it along, because half of that show, all the stuff that happens in Berlin is really kind of weak.
As you said in your email, it's usually typical of this show has run its course, it's being dragged out, I wish it would stop. I think like in terms of miniseries, there's treatments to certain things that I've gone, that was done so well, I'd love them to tackle something else. Like the way that Chernobyl told its story. And I think really brilliantly captured authoritarianism in a communist regime in Ukraine, and how things were done, and how like they could command certain things to happen. From that perspective, I thought was really interesting and never quite underexplored.
And also
not
kind
a
of
cliched like a Bond villain way either.
Yeah, and also the culture of
culture,
non-accountability.
Yes,
and
don't say the wrong thing. We're all thinking this, but you don't say it.
And also just the lack, like it's some of the bits in that first episode where they're like, "Oh, I've noticed that there might be graphite on the roof. Oh, I think the reactor is open." They go, "Well, go up on the roof and have a look then." And the guy knows that's the death sentence, basically.
To look into like the eye.
It's like, go. And the guy's like, oh, I won't do it. And then he makes a guard go with him to. Oh, it's terrible.
So like that treatment would be great.
Yeah, I agree. And obviously, is there any series that you could have done more with? What am I going to say? Mindhunter on Netflix, as ever. Thank you so much for that email, Mia.
This next one is from Jonathan. He says, hi, James and George. Hope you're well, especially James, who I ran into at Glasgow and accidentally called George. I tried to be cool by doing a quick hi and bye in passing, but I failed miserably. Jonathan, it was lovely. You were not cool. I was just like a little bit like surprised, but yeah, it was great. Always amazing. Never don't say hi is the main thing. Sticking on the music theme, more of that later. What are your favourite non-biographical...
Is that tease to me?
Yeah.
About a game we're going to play?
Yeah, we're playing a musical game.
Oh, okay, cool.
Sticking on the music theme, what are your favourite non-biographical music-related films? Did you get that? Non-biographical
So, not a biopic, so like Almost Famous, or...
The ones that come to mind are... Sirens on Our End?
Sirens on Our End.
It's like an interrupted siren. It's like turned off. We found the guy.
Yeah.
The ones that come to mind are The Dewey Cox Story, Almost Famous, This is Spinal Tap, Juice, if that counts, Coda, 8 Mile, and my personal favourites, La La Land, All the Best, and Sirens on Our End, fittingly, like this is it turns up. Jonathan, P.S. My controversial film opinion is that 2001 A Space Odyssey is not an all-time great. While it has some great set pieces, the characters are so boring you lose interest in the story. However, it might be prophetic in predicting the rise of our AI overlords sent in the middle of the Elton John set.
So that's his sign-off, is it? Sent from the middle.
Sent in the middle.
I thought you said it could be our AI overlords who are sent in the middle of the Elton John set. I love that, the idea of in a massive crowd and hearing Benny and the Jets. Just go send this email off.
In the back, like,
right, on 2001, I've heard this before from people, and it's like, it's fair enough. The thing is, you can't... 2001 is a bit like that bear story when you're a kid, which is like you can't go over it, you can't go under it, you have to go through it. You have to see it. And I do agree that some parts are more uneven. It's a bit uneven. Some parts are better than others. The whole Hal section is great. The monolith stuff's pretty good. The whole stuff with the apes at the beginning is a bit wacky, but like,
and the eyes wide vortex thing. Yeah, yes, it goes on a bit long. My main question for a lot of people that watch 2001, and I'm desperate to see it on a big screen, is did you watch it on a laptop / small TV?
Yeah.
And I really think for a film that came out as long ago as it did, that is a film that I think does not hold up on a small screen.
No.
I'm a fan of it, and I saw it on a small screen, and I thought I am getting a photocopy of a photocopy of the real thing.
Yeah, absolutely. The Prince Charles Cinema in London shows it all the time, and that's the last time I saw it was there, and I would love to have seen it in IMAX, which they did do for the 50th anniversary, which I missed.
Did they shoot it on 65mm?
I don't know what can we do, but and so when I went to see it on the big screen at the Prince Charles 5 years ago, I did take my girlfriend. And never see, and it was one of those things of like, look, I don't know if you're going to like this, but like, it is a thing to see. And sure enough, especially in the first 40 minutes with all the apes, she was like, what? What the hell is this? But it's really different, and you're absolutely right. It has to be seen on the big screen. It's just not.
It's such an unuseful thing, unconstructive thing to say to someone when they're giving an opinion on a film, because I also haven't seen it on a big screen. But yeah, I do think something is lost from that. That's all.
Was there another question there? Sorry.
The actual question. What are your favourite non-biographical music-related films? You mentioned 8 Mile, but 8 Mile is on the verge of being biographical. You've seen 8 Mile?
No.
Oh, 8 Mile's great.
I would say I've only seen Almost Famous. Almost Famous was one of those films I saw when I just started to get a job when I was 16, and I spent what little money I had on DVDs.
Yes,
I bought Almost Famous because it was in like a lot of best films of all time lists, and I watched it and I was like, it's okay. And I think I'd probably get more out of it now as I'm older, but so I can't really include that. Dewey Cox, Walk Hard, the Dewey Cox story, which I enjoyed at the time, but Dewey Cox, Walk Hard, the Dewey Cox story. Not only I've only seen that once, but I did like it, but I also think I would enjoy it more now. But that contains probably my favorite cameo scene of all time. Not only, obviously, you have things like Jack White turns up with as Elvis, but the whole scene in India with the Beatles, with Paul Rudd as John Lennon, Jack Black as Paul McCartney, Justin Long as George Harrison,
sounds amazing,
and Jason Schwartzman as Ringo. That whole, especially if you're a real deep Beatles fan like I am, that is so funny. And there's a line that Paul Rudd says that me and my friends still quote to each other, which is that they're talking with Dewey Cox's band, and they're like, we're big, and also like Jack Black's Liverpudlian accent is all over this. He's like, we're big fans of your records too. We think Hard Day's Night is our guilty as charged. And Paul Rudd as John Lennon just goes, great record. Great record. And now me and my friends, whenever we hear music that we really like, we'll go, great record.
Yeah.
Great record.
I love it when you're doing a person doing an impression. You're doing an impression of someone doing an impression.
Yeah.
Like I never do Michael Caine. I do Steve Coogan and Bob Bryan doing Michael Caine.
But that whole and the outtakes and the bits they didn't even use for that scene is so good. I've watched that so many times. But the other bit as well in the Walk Hard, which I love, is when it's like they're doing the whole trope of like when he just discovers drugs. And he walks in and he's like, oh, what's going on here? And they're smoking weed. And it's just like, we're smoking reefers. It's like, oh, okay, well, I don't want to get addicted. It's non-addictive. It's non-habit forming. Okay, well, I don't want to get a hangover. Well, it doesn't give you a hangover. Okay, well, I don't want it to affect my sex life. It makes sex even better, but you don't want any part of this. Well, you kind of made it sound like I want to be part of this. Anyway, I would probably say that. I can't remember even La La Land. I almost don't count as a film about music. It's a film. It's a musical, isn't it?
No, it's about music. It's about jazz. It's a white guy mansplaining jazz.
There you go.
Oh yeah, Whiplash wins it straight away.
Straight dumb. Next email is from Jared Block, who says, hello, James and George, or George and James. This is my second time writing into the show. I had written a few months ago. I was the one who had seen Babylon 6 times in theatre. Yeah, hats off to you again.
Yes.
Fair play. As said before by many others, I cannot get enough of PULP Kitchen. That's really kind, Jared. Thank you. I have cooked, driven, puzzled, and walked around with you guys for more hours than some friends of mine probably.
Puzzled.
Does that make us friends? Sure, Jared, it does.
We're glorious.
Anyway, to my question. When I was a first year, I took an intro to film class. This sounds American.
Again,
I think you are
I
American.
hope he's putting the final piece of his like
Jenga puzzle.
of his puzzle. And he just hears like, Jared writes to the show. He goes, oh shit! It just goes everywhere.
So, anyway, to my question. When I was in first year, I took an intro to film class where each week we dissected a different movie that taught us something about the new medium. I thought my professor had some very interesting choices. Some good, In the Mood for Love for framing, Gravity for special effects, and there's some questionable choices. Hail Caesar for screenplay, Paprika for animation. I've never heard of Paprika.
But are you watching them and acknowledging them for their flaws as well as
you're watching this film specifically to see it as an exercise. So Gravity, you're watching it to explore visual effects, right? Exactly. Forget the specific genres, but if you were teaching an intro to film class, what are a few essential films that you would include in the syllabus? For me, I would include Singing in the Rain, Barbarian, 2001: A Space Odyssey, which we just talked about, and The Graduate. Keep up the great work, and thank you again for continuing to deliver funny, interesting, and thought-out reviews. There were about 3 episodes in a run. There were about 3 episodes in a row a month back that I had disagreed with several of your takes, and I found myself still more hooked than ever because your explanations and critiques are so intellectual, mature, and informed. Jared, that's really kind. We're not going to agree on everything, but we do try. Like today with James, with your takes on films. Even if you don't like a film, we try and justify it, and we try and at least account for the fact we know these films are made by lots of people, and we just
we're not here to just agree with everything and promote things.
Yeah, we
it's
can't
just
speak
saying
the
how
truth.
we feel,
So sincerely, thank you. I've been listening since around episode 20, and I haven't stopped since. Always the best, Jared. Jared, thank you for a very, very kind, lovely email. Now, Jared, I saw your email come in, and as someone who did a film degree myself, I had a similar experience, and I wrote down some notes. Are you ready for these, James? Well, first of all, by the way, Singing in the Rain was on my film course. We studied it for about, I think it was the use of sound or music or something. So, Jared's
definitely into the biopsy of film with Babylon, like he's film study student, film history, breaking out what I like you, Jared.
Yeah, Jared,
you're a thinking man's
you got good taste.
Yeah,
kid, you go far.
Yeah.
So when we did, when we also similarly had I think it was called beginning introduction to film, similar to Jared's, right? For editing, we studied Requiem for a Dream, which I thought was brilliant. Great shout. But I had a friend who did a module called the Cinematic City, which is something I'm interested in. That sounds great. But they were really annoyed because one of the they did different cities each week, so Tokyo and Paris, etc. But for LA, the syllabus had chosen 500 Days of Summer, and we were talking about it, and we were like, that's actually a really lazy choice because it's clear that they've just gone, he's an architect. He wants to be an architect, doesn't he? In 500 Days of Summer, put that in for LA.
Yeah.
But if you actually watch 500 Days of Summer, he doesn't interact with his built environment at all. The only interesting architectural detail in that is in the last scene when he goes and meets Artem. Do you remember?
Yeah, Artem.
He's in the Bradbury building, which is a beautiful building, which by that point in 2009 has been restored and looks fantastic, but is the exact same building that the climax of Blade Runner is filmed in. And in Blade Runner, the original, they actually say, this is in the Bradbury building, so it's acknowledged as that. And that dilapidated Bradbury building that you see in Blade Runner is how it was in the 80s when they filmed it. Right. So in the time it was then renovated and redone. That's the only interesting bit. And maybe the bit on the park bench where he doesn't he draw on her arm or something? She's like, this is what you think you should do. Nonsense, isn't it? When we talk about that film, ridiculous it is.
It was such an indie darling.
But I've got some notes on if you and I, James, were to. I've got some notes, James. If you and I were to commission a course, some ones we could put forward.
Yeah.
So for pacing / editing, I actually think Tar would be a really good example.
Yeah.
About how, because if the whole sort of parallel with being a conductor and also how they control time. Yeah. In terms of auteur theory, if we're looking at the role of the director, so you know auteur theory, right?
No, go on.
So auteur theory is this thing in film theory, which is it's about the film director being like an author. The whole film project is something that everything stems from the director, and the director has the role of an author instead of being part of a much bigger machine. So the word auteur comes obviously from French history, and it's what the French were trying to do with Truffaut and Godard, but and it caught on in America but before that you had directors who were much more like journeymen who would just come in, crack out 100 films a year on a studio, etc. But one thing that would be interesting if you're looking at directors and auteur theory, I think, would be the Fabelmans, from the point of view that you have a Spielberg film
from an auteur,
about Spielberg done in his style. Like, if you had said to me that The Fabelmans wasn't made by Spielberg, I would say, oh, that's a very Spielbergian film. So it's interesting to have his style reflected back on his own biography.
The films that come to mind are Spielberg films. Like I've said before, Jurassic Park is like a really great one to study, like screenplay and structure. It's very clearly aligned there, and you can point at it and go, that's where that happens. You see how that was that. Any
auteur theory applies to any director who has a signature style.
Yeah.
So Hitchcock.
Wes Anderson even.
Wes Anderson. Probably the Tarantino. Those are the probably most distinctive auteurs. But there are other directors. James Mangold.
Yeah.
Not David Fincher, James Mangold, even actually some people have even said Ridley Scott, who does not actually have a signature style. Can you trace an auteur and a signature style through Ridley Scott's films?
I think like there's something to be said about grainy history epic, like large, lots of extras.
I think you're just thinking about Gladiator, aren't you?
No,
Napoleon,
Last Duel, even though
okay. Anyway, and then for I did a
separately, like, to that question, you could study someone who's like modern, who does a lot of different things, like Matthew Vaughn, right?
He's
covered like
but that still has style, though.
He still has style, but like within lots of different ideas comes Matthew Vaughn through that.
Ryan Johnson, even, would that be quite interesting?
Yeah.
Anyway. We also did a module uni about adaptation, as we talked about before, adapting, something for screen. And I would actually say Little Women, Greta Gerwig's Little Women, would be a really interesting case for that, because that's such a modern inflected film.
Yeah,
that feels so un-period piece that's the reason I love it.
Yeah.
Script, I mean, just off the top of my head, and what we were talking about recently, the script for Sisu. We said in terms of a minimal, sparse, concise exercise is a really good. I think
you could have removed the dialogue and it still could have worked.
It's the kind of thing you can easily teach in a class. Be like, do you see how they don't use dialogue here? And they tell it stage directions.
Absolutely.
And then sound, I guess, off the top of my head, any David Lynch film, I'm thinking about how just where it's not even music, it's just like ominous tones. You go into a room and it's just like
everything just
like a low hum, like a dreaded air conditioning unit.
Yeah. Kubrick as well.
Yeah, he's a very big auteur for that. So Jared, those are off the top of the head some ideas for the Pulp Kitchen University.
Guys, go to film school.
Do it. Just like
do economics or finance.
Well, we had that email from someone who decided to
change.
do that. But also plenty of great
shit.
resources and books out there to read about. Do
Yes.
you know what?
And podcasts.
I read on the holiday that I just went on. I spent a lot of my time reading.
Yes, I saw. Well done you.
Amazing.
Not in a patronising way. Just like it can be hard to find time.
The AFI interviews with some of the great filmmakers of the past 50 years, and I read some great interviews. But the two most interesting ones were George Lucas and David Lynch. George Lucas, because I didn't realize when I thought George Lucas was a kind of mild-mannered nerd who had managed, a bit like a Bill Gates.
Fancy the sister.
Who was just like, I actually came up with this fantastical thing that I'd been writing on the side.
Well, what really people don't understand.
But what I didn't realise is that actually George Lucas, in this interview at least, comes across as being much more avant-garde and much more abstract. And he only arrived at doing Star Wars by reining himself back in from his earlier stuff. And his first film, THX 1138, was like, he said he describes it as cubist. It's almost so abstract. And even American Graffiti, which is restrained a little bit, has so many ideas of being sort of devoid and separate from like a narrative film. He really didn't want to do narrative film. He was like interested in making documentaries. But he talks about freeing your mind and freeing your mind from a prison. He had this car accident when he was like 18. And it kind of changed the way he saw the world, and that's how he arrived at Star Wars. It wasn't like this.
While Star Wars, in its bare bones, is a hero's journey, save the princess with the magic
Which he literally talks about this. He's like, it's Joseph Campbell's hero's journey.
Think about how revolutionary and explorative and original all of that the world is, right?
Yeah.
The idea of the Force
But he said, I wanted Star Wars to be one of those films that you could watch with no sound. Because it's all about colour,
which you think
darkness,
is crazy when you think about sound. Yeah,
but that's amazing. Really,
think about the amount
visual.
of visual contrast in Star Wars between like Rebels and Empire, like structure and freedom.
Sorry, just to like summarize. And in the David Lynch interview, what I found really interesting is that for a guy who makes films that are just so dark and twisted and confusing, he comes across as really like emotive and spiritual and really cares about feelings and the beauty of the world. and it's this weird contrast.
Like your art could be considered cold. At the
And
same
cold
time.
and uncomfortable. And he said it's about the beauty of ideas. I was like, wow, that's crazy. Those were some of the things I read.
Guys, thank you so much for sending your emails this week. As always, we love to hear them. Send them in to hello@pulpkitchenpodcast.com, and we will do our best to read them out on the show. George, as always, Pulp Kitchen ends with a game. I'm just like, so out of Glastonbury, just music. And Elton John. It was like musical history, George. Being in the crowd, Elton John. I cried with Lewis.
Did
Capaldi.
you actually went and watched Elton John?
Did I watch Elton John?
No. I need to catch up with it because I was in Venice, like I said.
Venice.
But I have a lot to catch up on, and I've heard the Elton set was incredible.
If you allow me to be insufferable and indulge you, that was fucking incredible. Like, the hyperbole online truly does fit. Firstly, I've never been in a crowd of 120,000 people.
It's mad.
Very special. The great thing about Glastonbury, again, I'm sorry,
Here we go.
All the artists are so happy to be there, and they tell you they're so happy to be there, and that comes across in their performance. So, like, Fred again was like, this is my favorite place on the planet. As an artist, I've always dreamed of playing here.
Yeah.
Lewis Capaldi, bless him, not able to sing, struggle. But that whole connection between him and like trying to finish the song and us finishing it for him was like really special. And then you get to like the DJs who are also really happy to be there. And then Elton John, who I'm sure it's just marketing, but he says, this is my last ever performance. And Elton John...
In the UK.
Yeah. He's saying...
There's always an asterisk.
There's always an asterisk. He's had like 3 farewell tours. But anyway, he's saying like, this is my last ever performance. I will never, ever forget this. Thank you so much for being here. He says, thank you so much for being here. It means the world to me. And then he's playing these songs and he's doing, obviously, like all the greatest songs and the whole crowd knows him singing them. And then he's doing this, like, his last song was Rocket Man, and he does this extended piano interlude, and everyone is just like, holy shit, he is like doing this extended piano farewell to his music career. And everyone was very emotional, but I looked around at the end when the fireworks were going off. 1 in 20 people were wiping tears away from their eyes. There was a girl in her group who I turned around and she was literally cupping her hands in her guy mate's chest, just streaming with tears. I was like, I just don't understand. It was incredible. Anyway, in the spirit of that,
I know, I bloody hippie,
so insufferable. Music, George. Music in films. Needle drop moments. Yeah. Some directors wouldn't ever touch putting a licensed track in their film, but some directors have absolutely not just made their films, but they've actually made the songs themselves blow up beyond their original context. So in the spirit of music, I want you to guess the film from the song that plays in it. Some of these songs were like commissioned specifically for the film. Right. Some of them are songs in their own right that if I say them, you'll go, that belongs to that film. Okay. You're a guy who likes his music. Yeah. So I'm figuring out, so for example, if I was to say Lose Yourself by Eminem, you would say
8 Mile. Exactly.
So
okay, let's do it.
Are you ready? We've got 2 rounds of this.
Okay.
And then I've got a Casters Countdown. I think I've got 2 Casters Countdowns for you. Okay, so George, are you ready?
I'm ready.
George, you have to guess the film from the song. Ready? Eye of the Tiger by Survivor.
Rocky 4?
Yes. Gimme Shelter by Rolling Stones.
Either Mean Streets or The Departed.
Yes. Kiss from a Rose by Seal.
That is Batman Forever?
Yes. I Will Always Love You by Whitney Houston.
The Bodyguard.
Yes. Unchained Melody by The Righteous Brothers.
That is Ghost.
Yes. Make My Dreams Come True by Hall & Oates.
That is either Zoolander or 500 Days of Summer.
Yes. Pure Shores by All Saints.
The Beach.
Yes. See You Again by Charlie Puth and Wiz Khalifa.
Furious 7.
Yes. Last one. Old Time Rock and Roll by Bob Seger.
That is Risky Business.
Yes.
I was going to say Top Gun, but that is Great Balls of Fire, isn't it?
Yeah.
Very good. Okay. You did well. All right. Thank you.
Good fun, right?
Woo! Not too bad.
Yes, you got like Kiss from a Rose. But that just is Batman. That song doesn't live outside
for a second. The idea of that song now being in a Batman movie.
Cheesy. Never. Can you imagine like Robert Pattinson rolls credits? It's like having Guy Ritchie.
Great.
It just shows
Gets
you how
in your head,
far
that one.
Batman has. Oh, it's like a baby. I can make you to a kiss from a rose. Great, like, it's great road trip one.
Oh, yeah,
Because you
yeah,
all
yeah,
just
yeah.
have the whole. Did you see the film The Vacation with Ed Helms?
No.
That film, I with Christina Applegate as well. I really, really found it funny in 2015 when I watched it. But that film is a love letter to that song being in Batman Forever. And I thought it was so funny. But they play it like 7 times in the movie. So you walk out of that film, you're just like, baby. Okay, are you ready? Round 2. You have to guess the film from the song. Ready? Take My Breath Away by Berlin.
Top Gun.
Yes. Free Fallin', Tom Petty.
Jerry Maguire.
Yes. Mad World by Gary Jules.
Donnie Darko.
Yes. Jump by Van Halen.
Ready Player One.
Yes. Can You Feel the Love Tonight by Elton John.
The Lion King.
Yes. Don't You Forget About Me by Simple Minds.
The Breakfast Club.
Yes. I Don't Want to Miss a Thing by Aerosmith.
Armageddon.
Yes. Last one. The Power of Love, Huey Lewis and the News.
That's the Back to the Future, right?
Yes. Full
Because
marks.
I get confused with that Frankie Goes to Hollywood Power of Love as well. There's 2.
Yes.
So thank you.
Full marks.
Thank
Love.
Thank you.
Very, very well done. Did you get them all at home?
You could do more.
Oh, yeah, you could do more.
I'll write another round for you.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a good one. Right. As always, we like to end with a little cast list countdown.
Okay.
As you guys, if you guys don't know how to play, I am going to read the members of the cast of the film in sort of least important order to most important order. George has to try and guess the film that I'm talking about before I get to the end of the cast for reasons. Ready, George, to do the first. I don't know if you've seen this film.
Okay.
But I don't think we've discussed it.
That's fine. I like it.
But we'll go for it anyway.
Do it.
Ready? George, you have to guess the film based on its cast. Ready? Rooney Mara.
Okay.
Eric Knudsen. Fred Willard.
Okay.
Steve Buscemi. Ray Liotta.
With Rooney Mara.
Gene Smart. Zach Galifianakis. Justin Long.
Is
Portia Doubleday.
uh,
Adhir Kalyan.
is this
Last one.
Youth in Revolt?
Yes.
Yes.
Michael Cera.
Right, yes. I know that because Portia Doubleday, I only either know for that or Mr. Robot.
She's not in that much stuff.
Yeah, but Rooney Mara's in that.
She's in the cast.
Wow. And I remember because Ray Liotta and Steve Buscemi are doing classic
Ray
indie
Liotta
supporting
playing
roles.
The most Ray Liotta role.
He's a cop in it, isn't he?
Yeah, and he's like sleeping with his mum or
Yeah,
something.
yeah.
I remember seeing Youth in Revolt and actually really enjoying
me
it at the
too.
time. It's sort of like indie film of its era.
Yeah.
But I remember seeing Michael Cera in it and being like, wow, like Michael Cera is so much more than the friend from Superbad. He's actually really, really
'Cause he plays
talented.
2 roles in that.
He's playing 2 roles and
Yeah.
it's really sort of strange and funny.
Yeah, when he has the alter ego, basically.
Yeah,
he
and
plays.
it's like funny how he just like completely.
It's like a Fight Club thing, isn't it?
Yes,
Yeah.
It's really well done.
Huh.
That was Youth in Revolt. Just a film I don't think we've mentioned. Doesn't get talked about that much.
This is how I love how film connects to memory. You've just made me think of that film, which I have not thought about in years.
Yeah.
I watched that hungover in February 2011, maybe 2012, in my kitchen.
Yeah.
Not even in a sofa,
Yeah.
just sort of like in a hard space.
Yeah.
Watched the whole thing.
I went to go see that with 2 friends in the cinema, and I remember it was like our local cinema had really bad timings, so instead the only place that had a good time for us to see it was in Leicester Square. And the ticket was like double the price, and it was a nightmare to get to. It was the middle of the summer, and we were just like, we're never doing that again.
Yeah.
Like, why would we do that? But like the film was actually enjoyable. Okay, George, are you ready?
There's another one.
Yeah, there's one more. There's one more.
Great.
Ready? Again.
Is this again another film we haven't talked about? Or
We will not have talked about this film.
Okay.
But again, I don't know if you've seen it, but for kind of completely different reasons.
Okay.
Ready? George, you have to guess the film based on its cast. Ready? Paul Rudd.
Okay.
Steve Coogan.
Okay.
Rami Malek. Kim Raver. Bill Cobbs. Patrick Gallagher. Carla Gugino. Ricky Gervais. Robin Williams.
Stacked. Oh, hang on.
Dick Van Dyke.
Is this
Last one.
Night at the Museum?
Yes, Ben Stiller.
Any of them?
One. Night at the
the
Museum
first one.
1.
Wow, I didn't
Yeah.
realize that had. I mean, I didn't know all of those names.
So the ones you wouldn't have got were the other old guys with Dick Van Dyke.
Right,
You know,
okay.
there's like 3. You've seen it, yeah?
No.
Oh, there's
never
like,
seen it.
Dick Van Dyke is...
Go on, try and tell me about this film that I haven't seen and you clearly haven't watched in years.
Dick Van Dyke is like the old museum guard that Ben Stiller takes over.
Oh, right.
And they, like, from magic within the museum, are able to live forever.
Oh, I see.
And so he's old, but, like, he's, like, thousands of years old. And then, like, he has to take them over at the end.
Oh, okay.
But there's, like, 3 of them. There's Dick Van Dyke, Bill Cobbs, and one of the others.
Right, okay.
And then, like, the second one has got, like, Ed Helms and... Hank Azaria and like loads of other people. And I was like, it's actually a pretty stacked cast.
What about the third one?
I have not seen the third one. Was there 3?
I think the third one's in London, isn't it?
Is it?
With Rebel Wilson.
Yes, she's Aussie.
She's Aussie, but she plays an English person.
Right, yeah.
In that kind of way.
Americans are all the same.
Well, no, she's Australian. So, but
they're Americans.
Oh, yeah, but they are. But also, you know, I'm doing an English voice. You know, hello.
Oh, yeah. This. Anyway, guys, thank you so much. Hope you enjoyed the games. Don't forget, we post new episodes of the show every single Wednesday.
And as you know, guys, we have bonus content going out throughout the week. Keep your eyes peeled for our feeds. We've got James's review of Asteroid City coming out and Secret Invasion. And let's not forget to follow us on Instagram and TikTok and YouTube and like and subscribe and give us your support and share and thanks and comments. And it really does help us grow. And the more we grow, the better things we can do.
Sorry it's late this week. George was on holiday.
And yeah, we're busy people. So I'm sorry it's a belated episode, but thank you for sticking with us. We really appreciate it.
Guys, thank you so much. We will see you next week for Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1.
Bum, bum, bum.
God, I gotta put all that in a title. That and maybe Elemental.
Oh, it's hard work doing a podcast, James.
Do you think we do MI colon? Or do you think we need to put Mission Impossible? Well, you guys will probably know by soon.
See you next week.
Bye, guys.
Again, James, cut this. Okay.